My name's Chris.
I'm Christy.
This is a very special episode of the Washing Up podcast today because, we decided that, well, let's face it, to be honest, there's one reason why we decided to do...
Only one.
There was only one reason why we decided to do the podcast on Masterchef this year after Bake Off.
Yes.
And when we decided to do it, what did we say?
I said, I'd really like to talk to Elena.
So with that in mind, Elena Duggan, welcome.
Hello, good morning.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you on the show.
Oh, it's be here.
It was sort of, we were following along quite intensely last year on social and tweeting you like every episode.
I mean,
It's fun to interact, that's for sure. So it's because it can be a bit of a lonely world out there sometimes, and it's always fun to see other people having a bit of a laugh along with me.
I think it's an interesting add-on to the idea of like sort of reality-based TV and like precious contestant TV is social media, and we find it's really interesting to add that into the equation.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's changed slightly each year that they have done it, but I think in terms of like it's pretty special being able to connect with the audience anyway when we are so absent and kind of locked away and in this sort of bubble, to be able to then have so much interaction. It's kind of two extremes, but in the best possible way, because you're totally unaware of any kind of audience when you're in the middle of it. So to come out and have to be able to interact and connect and share funny tidbits and all of that stuff, so it's pretty special.
Yeah, it's kind of, it gets a bit like crazy. Like you think to yourself, 15 years ago, this wouldn't have happened. You just watched your TV show. Like, could you imagine if this was happening when Big Brother was out? I mean,
That sounds a bit dangerous, actually.
Yeah, that does sound quite scary.
What was happening under the dancing doona?
No, we don't need to know what was happening under the dancing doona. No one needs to remember it exists.
Yeah, we're one of the most positive shows, and even we still cop some negativities. So for a show that is even more controversial than it would have been, I hate to think what some of the individuals sort of went through.
I think the other interesting part about that, though, is and the way that, I mean, the difference between Big Brother and what you're doing on MasterChef in terms of that media would be, of course, the fact that you guys tape well in advance. So I think that would make it really interesting too. That idea of, it's all for you. You sort of know where the journey's going, whereas they.
Well, to a degree, there are some reactions that I could have anticipated to other contestants who are good friends of mine, things that I found very endearing and just completely adorable about some people. The public audience occasionally sort of took, didn't like that at all, and that surprised me. So even though we are fairly aware of what's going on, you don't know how people are going to react or respond, and especially when a few minds get together. So one individual opinion can turn into quite a big one pretty quickly when it's online. So
yeah, and I guess as social media user, you forget you've got to look at it. That these are actual people, bearing their soul on TV. I mean, I remember when I made a fool of myself on Vidiot. I'm so glad. I'm so glad, there wasn't social media. Then people would just be going, oh my God, she doesn't even know who Tom Carroll is. And I couldn't.
But it is an interesting thing. Like when I don't often respond to trolls, but occasionally the teacher in me feels the need to just let them know that their behaviour wouldn't be acceptable face to face, and that they, rather than making massive assumptions and cruelties towards people, maybe they could ask a question and see how someone's doing. So occasionally I have responded, and usually the response to that is, I didn't even think that you would read this. I didn't know that this was a real person or account or anything like that. I'm like, you see me interacting. What do you?
No, clearly you're a bot. You just exist. You're a bot. That's purely it. It's like the teacher. You're not actually a person. You're a teacher. You live at the school.
That's actually quite a funny thing, because before MasterChef, students would run away from me if they had anything that they had due or owing, or they run run towards me. So that's kind of funny.
That would have been so handy. So it's linking in with the education thing. So education versus food as a career.
It's definitely not versus. They're interconnected for me now.
Mm-hmm.
I've been teaching at a behavioural school. We've been doing sort of cooking for life.
Nice.
A lot of these students have gone home to recreate dishes or recreate their own things using techniques that we've learned and shared.
Oh.
And it's a way for them to have input into their family life, for them to chat with their families. I feel like it's also increasing their engagement in other subjects because they are feeling a little bit more ownership and responsibility. It's been hugely rewarding. And yeah, so I see that it's not going to be separate. This is sort of just a development and a new chapter in my teaching. And a lot of my art knowledge and history knowledge and all of those sorts of things, it all comes into play. I sort of see music and art and food as three kind of universal languages that regardless of your background, regardless of your spoken tongue, you can understand those things and share those with other people and communicate quite freely with those three things.
I agree completely. I work with people with disability, and those are three of the main elements if you're trying to, create an authentic, engagement and to draw people out. There's usually a passion or a love there. We had this beautiful moment where we worked with a watercolor artist for about 12 weeks to try and help people express themselves. And it was going, okay, people were learning some new techniques. And then this guy I was working with, who was, had severe spasticity, was in a wheelchair, was able to express that he really wanted to ride a horse. And it was just, it's one of those moments like, this is why we do it. This is what we do. So
yeah, and it's all about, and again with education, as you said before, it's all about that engagement and getting someone who may never have engaged to find reason.
And I think those three avenues of creative expression are hugely important to nourish a person's soul and confidence and social sorts of skills. And as soon as those sorts of three things have been kind of boosted, everything else just comes a little bit more easily. So yeah, I see it as a progression rather than a versus.
And which is for me bang on, and it also played in your creativity. Definitely played into your time on the show and the way you were presenting food and the way you were presenting dishes. And that, I think, was one of the things that endeared you to a lot of people, is the way that you were sort of, there was a lot of thought going into the way you were preparing it, the way you were presenting it, and what you wanted to show in each dish. And I think that was sort of where your engagement with the audience sort of picked up a hell of a lot. That was how I read it, at least.
Oh, I was with Elena for week 2.
You were.
I'm like, who is that woman that they're hiding in the background there?
Well, I might have got in trouble for hiding in the background a little bit myself in the I tended to stick in the back row a couple times. Not super out of purpose, but I didn't sort of push my way forward or anything like that. And I sort of landed where I landed if there was a mystery box on, but it did end up that I was in the back row a few times.
Hey, look, if your name was Trent, you would have had it easier. They expect you to be a ninja.
Just to follow up on that, Trent does actually exist, right? Because
are we talking Trent from my season or current season?
Yeah, no, well, both actually, but Trent from your season, he exists, right?
Trent is awesome. He's one of my best mates, actually.
No, that was the thing. Everyone on social loved him, but there was this long period of time with the way it was edited that no one knew if Trent existed.
Yeah,
it became the running joke. And then this year's Trent, the same things happened to him. He was sort of missing, and then he's taken up this idea that he's a ninja who just ducks into the back of scenes.
Maybe there's an editor with something against Trent.
Trent biased.
An ex-boyfriend or something.
But no, we sort of noticed a bit of that. So that was something that I wanted to get into. Now, obviously, the story went out there that you actually applied for season 7 and missed.
Yeah, I made it quite far, but I think they knew that I wasn't ready, and I was kind of half telling them that I wasn't ready. My final interview, I sort of And there was also miscommunication with my email. So I had applied, and then I got a call saying, "Are you still coming in today for your audition?" And I said, "What? I haven't received any notification of this. I'm completely unprepared. I just thought I didn't make it." So they very kindly allowed me to come in the next day because I hadn't received any of the email communication.
Yep.
But having said that, I was underprepared. So I wasn't able, in terms of skill level, but also emotional preparation.
You weren't braced.
I still had a ball doing it. But it was, it sort of, I guess, freaked me out a little bit. And I remember sort of being in my interview, and I didn't super have a clear and concise way of communicating what I wanted to do, because I knew that I wanted it to be a part of my future, but I hadn't allowed myself to think it was possible.
Yeah.
So, and it's very hard to communicate something if you don't really know what's possible. So as it turns out, my old pa passed away a couple of weeks after that process. So not getting in allowed me to actually spend time with my family during that challenging time.
Yeah.
I actually also met my now fiance during that time. So
that's a double, yeah.
So
getting that family time and then meeting your fiance. So
it's kind of one of those things where at the time I sort of thought, okay, well, this has been a great fun thing. I didn't get in. The first day I was sort of just about acceptance. I think I went through the grieving process in an opposite kind of way. And then the next day I was like, actually, I think I really want this. That was a great buzz, and I haven't felt that motivated or engaged or excited or thrilled about a challenge in quite a while. And so for the year ahead until the next audition, and you don't have any idea if you're going to get in or be invited back, or even if the show's going to run again. Like, you have no idea. But the motivation for me to learn a new skill or taste a new ingredient or learn or make an entire dish or try a new cuisine, one thing every day for the year ahead, became a massive, I don't know.
It was sort of a driving force.
Therapeutic kind of hobby for me.
It's a good hobby to have.
Yeah. Well, my sister who was living with me at the time certainly enjoyed all of my
benefits.
And she's become an incredible cook since I've been absent.
She gets the practice.
I was like, what happened when we were living together?
She's like, I was just riding your coattails.
Yeah.
I've been stashing this skill away for the longest time. I'm not telling you.
So she's very clever with doing it too. I would host dinner parties where I would ask all the guests to choose either a key ingredient or a cuisine type, and I would rise to the challenge that day.
Then she'd have other ones where she'd ask them for a mystery box, and then she'd have other ones where you'd have to draw a knife out of a block. And
well, quite knives out of blocks, I think that could be a bit dangerous. I definitely, my partner and my sister often brought me mystery boxes. There was one that sort of, it went, for about 5 hours because it was amazing.
Did they set up a whole bunch of cloches and you had to guess the ingredient underneath?
And more importantly, did he stand there and yell at you like George?
No, but they were... when I first met Eric, actually, I would ask him for feedback and he'd be like, well, I ate it. And I'm like,
that's feedback.
Can you be more specific? I'm trying to grow here.
I'm just imagining an Elena Duggan biopic, right? And they do a montage of you training for MasterChef.
Like Rocky. You come into the house, and as you come into the house, there's the MasterChef logo over the door.
I think
there's a Vesper in the garden.
Yes. Despite the time difference, I think I would need to wear some sort of 80s Let's Get Physical outfit.
Oh yeah, 100%. That'd be
Eye of the Tiger playing in the background.
Yeah, Eye of the Tiger in the montage at the back there.
Yeah, that I've confused the viewers about the period of time in which it existed. I think that
it's an anytime thing.
The 80s is anytime, really.
The 80s is anytime. So, talking about the dishes and talking about those making those dishes on the show and being in that fishbowl, one of the questions, and I think it pops up a lot on social media, is that every year we seem to end up with, there's a bit of a theme going with the style of dishes. So 2014 was panna cotta year. So 15 was panna cotta year. You had spheres and you had parfaits in your year. This year has ice cream, as everyone's doing ice creams. Everyone was doing all of those things. Yeah. Is that kind of a bit of the fishbowl effect of you're cooking so much back to back to back to back to back that you just get in that headspace and you don't notice it?
I think we certainly weren't aware of how much parfait there was until towards the end. But it's we also, when you're on a limited time, like for parfaits especially, you know that you can have a frozen creamy element ready in half an hour.
Yep.
And so that is one main element, out of the way, done, success. You can change up the flavors of it. You can combine it with other textures and colors and shapes and liquids and whatever else. And so I think for that, everybody enjoys them. Like the reason they
of course, a parfait is always delicious.
Yeah. And we certainly, whenever there were non-spherical molds, they were also utilized. But there's sometimes limitations.
Yes.
So, see, I just don't think their buyers are going well, because like I've got like a D20 dice mold which could be used. I've got Lego molds. What else have we got? Like trains.
That's so cool.
Lego would have been awesome. Yeah. But what I thought was because what you just said there about not freezing, that was sort of what we'd heard last year, and there were former contestants saying the reason there's so many parfaits is that things don't freeze, and so you can almost guarantee your parfait will set as opposed to an ice cream. This year, obviously, they've increased the quality of the ice cream makers.
I haven't noticed if they're any different, but I think that people definitely caught on that, like, and it may be a sort of unconscious decision that everyone made parfaits last year, so I'm going to do something different. And
it was actually more conscious, because I think Eloise was saying on social media the other day that the reason why she suddenly decided to do a parfait this week was because she was very aware that last year parfait had been almost every week.
Yeah.
So she'd left it as long as she could before she made one, because she was very aware from last year there'd been parfaits.
Yeah. It's and I mean, all of the elements, like a panna cotta, a parfait, and an ice cream, they're all delicious.
Yeah. No one's saying they're not.
And why it sort of is a bit of a go-to, and especially when time becomes an issue.
Yeah.
So, I think we all probably did one that wasn't perfect as well. So,
but you've got to do one of those. You've got to have one of those. They need to have the music cue where you suddenly get worried.
Yes.
It's an important music cue.
Listening to the music, I've even when I've been watching this season, I have to turn it down. It makes me anxious.
I was going to ask about that idea of time pressure. Yeah. So,
do you have counselling now for the PTSD that's obviously induced?
Sometimes it becomes all a little bit too real and a bit scary. There's been times where it sort of feels a little bit too real to live it through again. And often when I do interviews, they play the finale announcement.
Oh no.
I can feel like I've gotten a lot better at it, but I can feel everything in me rise. I'm like, oh, well, just calm down.
The other thing I'd like to know is, first of all, how do you cope now that you don't necessarily have to cook under time pressure? And secondly, do you need someone in the kitchen going, 30 seconds left?
Occasionally, my friends and family still think it's hilarious to do that.
I bet.
You've got cool family and friends. I'd rock up in a cravat.
Oh, actually, we did a section with some students recently with the behavioural school and distance ed kids, and 3 teachers came very kindly to judge, and they were all totally the whole time. They didn't break, and I was really impressed.
That's spectacular. I love that. So, background. You mentioned your background before in terms of family. Now it's become, for people on social, I think occasionally it becomes a bit of a trope now that, oh, here comes the background story. But how important is that background when you go on MasterChef?
You don't necessarily consciously think about what is going to, like, I don't think I could have anticipated how many of my creations would have been triggered by a memory or an ingredient or something
So I love that reef walk that you did, which was triggered, and I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and I like that was just I'd taken down the photos of my wall because you pack every time you're getting ready to leave. That was the pictures that really resonated with me. I had dreams about similar dishes. So I often had dreams about dishes, and I'd get up and draw them in the middle of the night.
Oh my gosh!
Art teacher.
I would draw them before I would write a recipe, so I'd draw them and just notate each element. But that was one of the ones that I had a dream about, but it just so happened that it worked perfectly with that challenge that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like, the more that you practice, the more tools you've got to apply something to any situation. It just so happened that one just slotted in perfectly. It still didn't look perfect as I had anticipated it, and I think I left 3 or 4 elements off that I wasn't happy with. I would have liked it to have been a bit more of a sense of discovery. But I think that is a lot of the dishes that we create. Like, it's the first time you're making it. And so you do think about how you could have done it better. Like the dish of mine that probably had the biggest development was the apple bickies and cheese for my semi-final dessert. Yeah. I made the first version of that the first week in the house, and then I changed various elements and all sorts of things throughout the process until I was happy with it. So most of the other moment ideas about, because you can have an idea and that ingredient is not available that day, or or that a piece of equipment is off limits, or you're working outdoors and the flame won't stay on very easily,
or it won't fit into a sphere.
So,
now, my follow-up to that, though, is that what happens, how do you cope when you get a brief and you go blank?
Not very well, obviously, for some people. Like,
yeah, it's I learnt very early on that if I gave myself a few moments at the beginning rather than just running and rushing and doing something, I tend to have more clarity and more opportunity to stick with that one idea rather than having to change halfway through. So rather than just starting in panic, I sort of had to almost... I've talked about this a couple of times. When we're standing outside waiting to go in, that is like the most anxious part of the whole process. And I really had to sort of quieten my mind and really sort of feel the anxiety rise, feel the fear, feel all of the self-doubt, everything. I had to recognize it early, know what it felt like, and then let it go just as easily. Otherwise, it became an emotional obstacle. So I had to recenter myself a couple times during cooks, but if I just ran to the pantry or just ran to the equipment stand and got started straight away, occasionally it happened faster than others, but I tended to give myself a few minutes at the beginning to plan, and that prevented me often from having to divert too far.
So it sounds like it's almost like part of this, the real challenge of being on MasterChef is kind of managing your own responses and reactions to things, like to actually garner a response rather than a reaction.
Absolutely. Well, we don't have any control over what challenge is going to be thrown at us, what ingredient, what time, what anything. We've got no control over that. The only thing we've got control over is the way we respond.
Yeah.
So to do that in the best possible way, that's all that you can do. So I remember there was one specific day, the only day that I put myself in the bottom, solely responsible.
Yeah, we remember that.
I was like, no.
It was stressful for us, and we were watching.
I felt sick watching. I was dreading having to watch the episode. I failed epically in front of someone that I admired greatly, and I remember being in the middle of it going, I can't see a way out of this. I just couldn't see a way out of this. And I remember saying to Gary in the tasting room, he's like, what happened? And I said, well, yesterday I thought I was being persistent. Today I can reflect on it and know I was being stubborn. Like,
that's acknowledgement.
Yeah, it was just this, and I think because that's all you have to think about, it's you can sometimes come to those self-realizations and reflections quicker than you would in the real world. So it's, I just remember that day, how different it felt to every other day, that I made a conscious effort to be more in control.
And how do you go with the judges are the other element? I think that's always fascinating. How do you handle both making sure that when you get that praise, you don't go overconfident, and also making sure that in the worst moments when they're standing there yelling at you about why you're behind, that you don't just tell them where to go? Because I would snap.
I guess really, even as a teacher, because I feel like those are some of those tools are what I learned in teaching. Like, no matter how special a student is being in your face,
I would maintain it all the way up till we get to like 2 minutes to go, and they stop you to ask you, you're a little bit behind here. I'm like, well, I wouldn't be behind if I wasn't stopping and having this conversation right now. So go.
It's again up to the individual a little bit. You choose how you're going to respond in those situations. If you answer the question quickly, concisely, if you've thought it through, if you're considering everything that you're doing and you're not just sort of flailing about, then you
Flailing's never a good look in the MasterChef kitchen.
No.
It happens to the best of us. There is stuff that just rattles you some days that you just can't anticipate. I definitely thought I was more of a flailer before the show, I guess. But
didn't come through.
No.
Make the choice to, I guess I found something deep within me that I just had to make a choice. And it's similar with the judges when they come around. You have to learn very quickly how to decipher what they're telling you. Are they asking you a question because they want you to stick with what you're doing, or are they asking you a question, like, are they challenging your confidence in terms of, if you believe in it, you continue doing it?
Yeah.
Or are they telling you that, can you please just check this because something's not quite right?
Are they subtly going, you know what, you probably shouldn't do that?
But not saying ice
that.
Cream, maybe a bit more.
Let's not do that, shall we? So
there's one time, or two times that I can specifically remember. Once that they were sort of saying, have you actually tasted that? And because there was something that I had left steep too long, and I was busy doing all of the other elements. I came back to it. I was like, wow, that was like 30 seconds longer than it needed. And now it's just bad. So I can't use it. So I had to redo something. But then there was another in Inglenook where they said, are you sure about doing that and that and that? And I was like, I had already decided that I really loved the flavor. And I was like, I think they're just actually now trying to encourage me to believe in what I'm doing. So you really had to, they can only ask questions. They can't actually tell you what to do.
Yes.
So if they're making you consider it, you have to consider it and then make a decision with what to do after that, or after you've got all that information, I guess.
Well, considering you're getting like, supernatural help by, getting dreams and the universe just, pushing you along. I mean, it really, like what you've described just seems to be like this like fate, what the Norse would call weird, just leading you into this amazing journey that you've been on, and you're getting supernatural dreams, and you can just turn around going, no, this is the right one. I had the dream about it.
And it's always a good moment, I think, for the audience at home where they see the judges come up and ask those questions, and the person cooking just goes, no, I know.
Yeah.
I'm right.
I actually found when I was watching back, I got more, my responses became shorter to the judges. So I must
that's happened this year.
My time, and I'd be like, yes, no, got it.
That's happened this year too. There's been a beautiful little running battle we've seen with Eliza and the judges, where they first of all did the questioning and she went, no, I'm doing this. And George went, I don't think so. And then they tasted it and went, yeah, you're right. The next week they did it again, and this time George was right. And then when they were in Japan and they were cooking again, and Gary's come over and said something to her about, have you got this on? And she looked at him and went, no, Gary, no. And it was just beautiful. It's this beautiful running battle.
I think a part of it comes with your own belief and confidence, but a part of it also becomes with these people are becoming your guides, your mentors, your friends. You have a respect for them. You're spending more time with them. You've grown with them and they've grown with you. So it becomes a relationship where you can sort of, you're no longer living in fear of yes or no, sir.
Yep.
So I think it comes from those two sort of things.
And it is a beautiful thing to watch on TV, like earlier on when there's, 20 contestants standing around, and there is, we don't know everyone. And so, we go on that journey with you, and
Yeah.
see those relationships form and bond. And like this week is just so difficult. It's like kill your darlings. I don't know why I watch these shows. Like I get
You weren't coping loping last night with the elimination that happened
coping well.
last night on this series. You weren't coping. It was really hard.
Yeah, it's and that's how it feels for us as well. Like people sort of I thought that I was going to be labeled as this massive crier because I cry fairly easily anyway. But when you're growing these friendships with people and they've got similar dreams to you, the worst thing that can happen is have those dreams sort of put on hold or crushed or sort of feel like they're temporarily unattainable, because in that moment it is just so devastating. And so to watch people that you care about go through that, it's really, I don't know, I often felt more for the others than I felt for myself in those situations. I didn't want them to feel as devastated as they were looking. I wanted them to sort of know that it's just the beginning. Like
which we saw with in the grand final, where you had what I referred to as the Bake Off moment, because in Bake Off they do a lot of this, but when you went over and helped Matt in the grand final, which is, you see that a lot on Bake Off, not so much on MasterChef. Not saying it doesn't happen, but just in the editing they don't show a lot of it. But that shows that sort of camaraderie that you get with people that you've been around for that long.
In those moments, I didn't even think that would be really made that big of a deal of. And then in the 45 interviews that I did the next day,
it was a big deal.
Like, why did you help him? You were, in a competition.
You're like, oh, that's the moment you've all hooked into. Now,
I think I was just surprised because I believe that more people have that same, I don't know.
They want to help. People want to help others, yeah.
Yeah.
But, in the true spirit of competition as well, if you want to put it that way, is that do you want to go up against the worst dish someone can put up or the best dish they can put up? I mean,
you want to prove.
Actually, the way that I didn't really, I was never focused on the finale. I was always focused beyond the completion of the process.
Yep.
Or the completion of the journey, and how that then connects to my next thing. So I was always looking beyond
backward
that.
mapping.
Sorry?
I said backward mapping.
Well, kind of, because I didn't want to be so, because I saw a couple people get so focused on winning or so focused on whatever that it became an obstacle or I don't know what, it challenged them too much. Like I wanted to show that I had grown and learnt each day, and I was most competitive with myself. If I didn't improve, then that was disappointing. So I made an effort to do something new every single time. But I've lost track of thought a little bit. I'm sorry. But in terms of being there in the end and helping one another, like Matt was on my table the first day of auditions. Like we knew each other. He now lives on a street less than 5 minutes away from the street that I grew up on. Our partners are Croatian. He runs on the beach every day that I run on the beach every day before school. Like,
oh wow,
that's synergy for you.
That it's sort of you don't want to see someone struggling. It's awful. You don't want to see someone enjoying the final moments of such an epic journey. I really wish there were more synonyms for journey, but anyway.
No, you've been in education, there's not.
But it's also, I think, one of the beautiful legacies of MasterChef, over these, what we're up to, season 9 now, is that, for the past 9 years, we've had this culture and this legacy of people who had a dream and had something that they wanted to pursue, and MasterChef was the impetus to kind of give them, that push to go off and do it. So, got people like Adam Lior and Callan and Alison and, and yourself as well, who have now making their mark on the Australian cultural landscape in their own, unique ways, which,
And I think unique and culture are two key elements there, because it's not just about a food service kind of industry. There is so much more attached to it. There are so many more avenues and opportunities. There is space for all of us.
Yep.
So I think that what MasterChef does so cleverly is build this amazing supportive family, alumni, etc., and models that same sort of family values for us. So we are all supportive of each other, and we all know that we can be supportive of each other beyond the show as well.
Which always helps.
Because we all have different areas of interest, and there's space for all of us to do those things.
Now, just back briefly to the dishes. My first thing I need to know about the dishes is how many times since the finale have you gone through the 91 steps of the verjuice egg and remade it? Because it feels like an every night thing.
Totally. It's all I do.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's 91
now.
steps, it legitimately is all you do.
There's a couple of elements that I've utilized in other things, I guess, or similar techniques. I've not once made the entire thing from scratch again. I mean, the ingredients alone are quite difficult to source.
Well, last night they were doing a pumping caramel into an extracted egg yolk.
Yes, I did catch that part.
And that just made me think immediately of the egg. So that was where my head went.
When you've got so much adrenaline pumping, even if you feel like you've got control of your nerves, your body is shaking.
Well, you saw Eloise's hand when she was trying to do it, and the hands were just
it's this awful feeling. And so I understand why a lot of chefs use tweezers, because it slows you down. It makes you take care and consideration with it, and it stops your big bumbling fingers getting in the way of your amazing creations.
That's always handy.
Yeah, I just, I'm ham-fisted at the best of times. So, that egg and I don't think I even got the yolk separated to go into the cure in the first place.
I just dusted my hands and walked away. Now the stock standard question that you get all the time is going to be sort of what's the favourite thing that you cooked in your time in there? Now that's a stock standard question, but
that's okay. I've got different favourites for different reasons. I think, I can still, even as I'm talking about, I can feel the feeling rising up in me. When I was making the Spanish pork and rice, there was this moment when I was cutting the capsicum and into these perfectly matching little fine dice, and I felt like I was at home in my happy place, just doing it for the love of it.
Yep.
And it took all of my fears and nerves and self-doubt and all these other things away, and I was like, just do it because you love it. And that was a massive turning point for me, and to receive such incredible feedback on something that I just had the best fun doing.
And it took me every bit of restraint that I had to not try to eat the television. That is my favourite thing that you cooked by a mile.
I've made that quite a few times. That's a very requested dish, and I've done it in a few demonstrations as well, because nothing is overly complex once you know how to a few sort of basics, I guess. And I did it with a lot of my dishes. I use the same ingredient in lots of different ways, so that you sort of get it in lots of different layers and complexities of flavor. And I think people don't necessarily have the confidence to do that. So just encouraging them to be braver. So that was definitely a turning point in the competition for me. Another hugely memorable day is in Inglenook with my quail, grapes and goats cheese dish. That was again, it was just the most joyful day in itself. I've gone back and visited the chef and the space there, and I'll go back again in October. It was the most wonderful day, and I had a beautiful time with the ingredients. Everything was so local, seasonal, fresh, incredibly, just the quality was out of this world. And I wanted to pay absolute respect to all of those things. And so to have such good feedback and know that other people enjoyed it as much as I did putting it together, that's just the ultimate payoff. So, so those two definite standouts. The reef walk that I made for my sister was a standout. My crab, apple and sprouts in my final family mystery box. I
love how that, by the way, gets put out there now as crab with cauliflower, Brussels sprout and apple and a sauce. I love a sauce, because it could be anything.
It was a bacon crab shell applesauce.
Yes, I remember what the sauce was, but the way that there's and a sauce. So it's just so specific on the sauce.
It was an epic sauce. I've made that one several times too since.
There's bacon involved.
But it was. I loved that when I opened that dish, that box. It reminded me of my family, everything in there. So then to be able to cook something with ingredients that were familiar, Granny Smith apples, lemons, nothing bacon. There's nothing crazy. But to be able to treat all of those things differently with what I had learned and grown with, and to put them together in I guess a more thoughtful way, and something that I was really proud to show them.
Like, and especially at that stage of the competition for you as well.
Yeah. So that was a great one as well. So I've got a few different favorites for different reasons. But the one that I hate the most is still the one that I hate the most as well. So I guess they grow and change with you. They grow and change with you,
except for the one you'd rather forget. So my final random question that I have, because I'm a bit obsessed with this. Did you ever notice the Vesper on the way in? And is it in fact a real Vesper?
It is absolutely a real Vesper.
I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see it on, but I did.
This is what I'm saying. It's a shell.
No, I'm pretty sure it seemed highly functioning, but so I don't know if anyone has addressed it, but there's one season where it wasn't present, and it was not the best season.
I think it might be the good luck charm of the show.
They're like, where did we go wrong? There was no Vesper. Bring the Vesper back.
Can we have the Vesper again? That's what we need.
But I know that my dad would never bring bananas on our boat, so I'm wondering whether it's something like that.
Something like that. I'd like to think that in a Heston week, at some point in the future, when you've got to go out to the garden is in play, because it's a Heston week, someone runs out and brings the Vesper in. And just decides they're going to use elements of the Vesper in their dish because
on top of it, and you have to. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I think it's a very Heston sort of way of cooking.
Yeah,
certainly very photogenic, and is
makes it feel like continental Melbourne.
Totally.
One thing I was wondering is, like, with all the MasterChef that you've seen and the people that you've worked with. Would there be like a crack team that you'd like to assemble just to have a cooking jam or like a special night to?
I mean, in terms of proximity, I've probably spent the most time with Jimmy just because he's so close to me.
Jimmy's awesome.
We love Jimmy.
So, and if I was to, like, I've often thought, I mean, even considering my upcoming wedding, I've considered who would be willing to come in and cook for it, and knowing what I would love to have there, and knowing what their strengths are. And it's all about utilizing each other's strengths. So there's a few other opportunities that have
just fly Carmen in, I'm do my dessert.
I'm inviting you to the wedding. Oh, wonderful! But no. Let me make it clear. You're not a guest. In the kitchen with you.
Well, there's already been a bit of that. Matt cooked and catered for Miles's wedding that we went to, and Elise made the cake that wedding.
As you said, it's a network.
Absolutely. And if you want the best in the business and you know what they can do, then you do utilize that. So, but there are definitely people who I would love to work with, and in a pop-up sense, or any kind of a series event or something like that. We had such a great, like, those team challenges are such a thrill. They are so much fun. It's kind of a shame that there has to be a winner and a not winner at the end of the day, because it feels so good the entire time through it.
Those challenges are always for me one of the big highlights of the show.
Absolutely.
They did the one this season, which I really actually enjoyed. It was crazy, but I enjoyed it, which was the one where they couldn't see each other and they had to replicate the dish on the opposite sides of the wall.
I loved that challenge.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to be in it, because trying to hear what the other person is saying.
One of those things that you, it makes you think about what you're doing in a new way. And so I think you learn and grow in those kinds of challenges more than others, because you all of a sudden you have to communicate how exactly everything that you're doing, the visual, the texture, the sight, the smell, the temperature, all of those different things, it makes you a better cook because you have to consider those. So I just
Except for, unfortunately, poor Aram, who couldn't hear properly and has hearing issues. And that was a problem.
And those are those sorts of things that I'm sure that when the challenges are being created, that no one can anticipate.
No one thinks about it.
No, I'd suck. I've got perpetually swollen Eustachian tubes. So
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's like hearing a bit muffled at times, and I can't do improv anymore because of
Oh,
this
wow.
bloody hearing problem.
Because you can't hear your feed line.
No. I just stand on stage smiling and waving at people.
Oh. My partner has tinnitus from all of his many years on power tools, and so
So
he can't hear it. But yeah, it's a horrible problem, and it's I think they did incredibly well.
Oh, it was an insane challenge, but it was brilliant to watch.
Absolutely.
It was great, and that's the thing. Those challenges, those team challenges, some of the ones that come up are just incredible, and they're good fun to watch. And they look like, because you get to work with everyone else and use those skills, as you said, they're the ones I think you might enjoy a little bit more, because you can sort of feed off people a bit as well.
Absolutely, and it allows you to sort of, I think, the best thing to do in any work situation, any life situation, is to utilize each other's strengths. We've all got weaknesses, but why the heck would you focus on those? Get everyone to do their best work and imagine what's going to come out of it.
I wanted to ask, when you were in California, because you got family over there, did you get like a day pass to leave and go and...
No.
No.
I even, when we were collecting these, I even went past one of my cousin's offices, not go in.
So you're sitting there going, you know what? I might get put into elimination on day 1 so I can go visit them.
It was really like when we first got told we were going, I'm like, that's so awesome, because I knew how excited they were for me to be a part of the process and like the experience in general. And be so close to them, but not be able to talk to them. I understand all of the reasons why, but then I think the judges may have posted something online about their whereabouts or something, and so my cousins had half followed where we were and were about, it seems, a few hours behind wherever we were, because they obviously weren't doing it live.
Talking.
So, and I think they had friends of friends in the crowd cooking on Fisherman's Wharf. But it was kind of like, I've been to California a few times with my family, and so to go back with foodie eyes was pretty special. Like, it was these things that I thought were familiar to me that I was seeing in an entirely new way.
Yep.
And then when I got to go back for Thanksgiving in October last year, I was able to show them some things about where they lived, which was another sort of cool.
Well, did you know?
Yeah, well,
so cool.
I think that's what food does. Like, it's kind of infinite. So to be able to,
it's one of the things that MasterChef does best, is introduce people to new concepts and new ideas. And I think one of the things that you were able to do really well with that was sort of engage the audience with that. And it's been an absolute pleasure to get to chat to you today. It's kind of been our focus the whole way through, as we said, and we're thrilled that we've had this opportunity to get to talk to you.
That's lovely. Well, I'm happy to do it again. I know that we've had trouble getting timing organised, but happy to do it again if we can.
Well, considering someone's, only had 3 nights at home in the past term, I think, we can understand that your schedule is insane.
Definitely can understand that.
It's not always like that. Like, at the moment, I'm home a lot more because I'm creating a lot of content, video content and recipe content for my website, which is soon to launch.
Awesome.
So it's, I've been home more often to do that, which has been kind of nice. And I'm really excited to share everything that I'm doing there, because a lot of the engagement that I've received from everyone on social media is a lot of the healthy recipes that I make, or the different versions of things. Like, people still don't realize that out of the 60 competition dishes, only 2 of mine had gluten in them. So I didn't make it a focus. I didn't want to be known as like the gluten-free cook by any means. It just happens that I make delicious food that's suitable for all sorts of intolerances and sensitivities.
And we'll have to get you back on once you launch, just to sort of go over stuff on that site too, because I'd really love to be able to talk to you about all that too.
And it's something I'm really open to feedback for, because obviously, with limited time, you want to be making sure that people are getting what they would like to see out of it. So I've tried already to do recipes that people have made requests for, but I definitely want to be giving people what they want as much as possible. So we'll definitely have to do some shout outs. Yeah.
I definitely think so. So this has been a very special episode of the Washing Up podcast.
Absolutely.
My name's still Chris.
I'm still Christy.
That was Elena Duggan, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
And we will talk to you all later.
Bye.
See ya.